Hello, welcome back to my channel and to today's video, which as you can tell is a bit of an update of what's been going on throughout November. We are now in December. November was the worst month I've had in a fair few years. Really, really sucked. But we're at the other side of it now. There have been some positive outcomes and we are moving on, and I am really, really looking forward to Christmas being here because I will be going back up to York for almost 2 weeks and I'll get to enjoy some really nice downtime with my friends and family. But yes, what a month. Several things going on, and I'll tell you about them. The first one being a car crash, which happened on the 12th of November. So in fairness, you know, we had almost 2 weeks of November with no difficulties, and then it all went wrong. Yeah, I was in a car crash. Thankfully, as you can see, I am okay. It wasn't a huge crash in the respect that it was at a very slow speed, and no one was badly injured. I'd driven to my local Sainsbury's to drop off a vintage parcel at the in-post locker that is there for a £6 cardigan. A £6 cardigan caused all of this. Well, you know, it didn't, but ultimately it doesn't seem worth what happened for a £6 cardigan. It was 10:30 at night, it was very dark, and I was driving back and I was hit by a motorcyclist who had gone through a red light. And thankfully the motorcyclist wasn't badly injured. At the point in time of the crash, I didn't realise that it wasn't my fault. I thought it was my fault because I hadn't realised that he'd gone through a red light. And yeah, his bike hit the front of my car. He flew up and off it and landed on my windscreen, smashed the windscreen. And yeah, it was on quite a busy junction. The police were called, the paramedics were called. Thankfully, as I say, he wasn't badly injured. He had a limp, but he walked onto the ambulance himself. You know, the police deemed, you know, obviously it was an accident, and you know, that it was a difficult one because there was, as much as they understood how it was my right of way, there wasn't the proof that it was my right of way. There were witnesses, but none of them were in a position to see the traffic lights, and the traffic lights are key to what happened. I'm not going to get into it because this is now with solicitors and is a potential court case, so I'm not going to say anything on here that could be held against me, but it is my belief that that motorcyclist went through a red light and therefore the crash was not my fault. And there are technicalities as to why I believe that, but there's also technicalities in proving that, and at the moment we can't prove it. There isn't enough evidence as far as I'm aware. On top of that, the motorcyclist has filed a personal injury claim against me. That is why it's with the solicitors, and effectively if they cannot prove whose fault it was, then it would have to go to court to decide that, because that's the only way to get a verdict. However, I do not have the mental capacity or energy for a court case right now, and I know that I wasn't at fault, and it's that weird thing of I felt guilty at the time. I felt horrendous. I was sick with guilt and anxiety at what I thought I'd caused, the fact that a human being had landed on my car, and you know how bad that could have been. He was really lucky to have few injuries, but it could have been so much worse. And yeah, that stayed with me well, it's still with me now, but the first couple of weeks afterwards were very sleepless because I had a lot of flashbacks. And I'm an overthinker by nature anyway, so because I hadn't heard anything, I didn't hear anything for a while after the crash in terms of him until I found out that he was putting in a personal injury claim. I had all these thoughts of, well, you know, like he looked fine, but you never know if someone's got internal bleeding, all things like that. Worrying the worst, that he'd actually got an internal injury and died, you know. So even though, like I say, the accident wasn't my fault, there's a lot of guilt attached to that and anxiety. But now, you know, we are a good few weeks on, and I have managed to process a lot of that and start to move on from it. Everything is in the hands of the insurers and the solicitors, so there's not really anything for me to do on that. All it means is that if they can't decide whose fault it was, I will just have to accept liability to avoid it going to court, because as I say, I don't have the energy or the strength, and me paying the excess on my policy, to me, is worth way less than the stress and toll of going to court. They have the money, I don't care, I'm not doing that. There's a lot of other things going on at the moment, and yeah, I just don't have the energy. So it's really frustrating because the other side of it is that my dash cam wasn't working, and that would have been the evidence that we needed to prove it. But it wasn't working, can't change that. Anyway, so my car got taken away for assessment, and I hadn't realised just how bad the parts shortage is in the UK at the moment. And because of that, they have written my car off. Because, as you can imagine, from the scale of the crash, slow speed, motorcyclist hitting me, the damage really wasn't too bad. Smashed windscreen, there was dents on the front bonnet and the right wing, and the grille had been smashed in from the impact of his bike. But no mechanical faults, and the structure of the car was fine. It was just bits of bodywork. But it was a minimum of a 12-week lead time on parts, and for all the time that it's in there, they have to provide me with a courtesy car. That courtesy car is £70 a day, and that equates to almost £6,000 over a 12-week period of them getting parts, plus then however long it would take them to repair it, and it might even take longer than that to get parts. So, you know, it's £6,000 minimum courtesy car spend, plus the cost of the parts, plus the cost of labour. And so in total, that took it to more than the value of my car. So therefore, they have written it off. Now, obviously, to begin with, I was really upset by this and really gutted. I loved that car. I've had it for almost 4 years, and it's done me really well. It's, you know, had the general wear and tear on it, but it's been a really good car. It's never had any actual problems. It's been really trustworthy, very reliable. I loved driving it. But, you know, every cloud has a silver lining, and the world works in ways that, you know, it's forcing your life in the right direction sometimes, because I don't need a car in London. I don't. London has amazing transport links, as we all know, and I live in Zone 2, so, you know, relatively central in the grand scheme of things. The only time I ever used my car was if I was had a lot of parcels to take. I would do the parcel run in it, which I don't need to. It's very walkable. Excuse me. As you can tell, I'm recovering from a cold. The other time I would use it would be to drive home if train tickets are expensive, or if I had a lot of stuff to take with me that I didn't want to lug back on the train. So yeah, I don't need a car in London, and I don't need a car at home because it's village life. Well, I do need a car at home, but I have one, is what I'm trying to say. It's village life, car's necessary, but I am insured on my mum's car. She very rarely drives it. She works in the village. She only drives it once or twice a week to go into town or to go visit my nan. The rest of the time it's just at home. So I have full use of that when I'm at home. So yeah, I don't need a car in London, and I did need money. And obviously they've given me a payout. I did need money because at the moment, obviously I'm in the final year of my masters, and since I last updated you, the workload has grown and grown and grown. It is very intense. I'm still working 2 days a week in my architecture job part-time, and that is manageable at the moment, but I don't know how long that's going to be manageable for, because if uni carries on at this rate of growth in terms of workload, I may have to step away from work. And that choice might also be made for me too. Again, the world working in its ways, in that my contract is due for renewal there mid-January, and our workload is what depends on that getting renewed. They are more than happy with me and my performance, but the industry is still a bit tricky at the moment, and we've actually had quite a big project get put on hold this week. So we've not lost it, it's just the client deciding to hold off for a while longer for various reasons. Which means that the staff that are working on that now need to be put on other projects. So yes, again, maybe the world will make the decision for me on me stopping working. I'm not sure yet. But if I do have to stop working, I now have this pot of money that will help. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to use all of it on living costs, but if I need to dip into it, that is what it's there for. Because the other side of the coin is that if I'm not working my architecture job 2 days a week, I can use some of that time to up the ante on my reselling. And although I don't think I'd be able to make exactly the same amount as what I'm currently making at work, I don't think I'd be too far off it. And then I could split the difference by taking some money out of this pot of money that I now have, which also is a lot more than I was expecting, because I was expecting them to give me the trade value of my car, i.e. how much money you would get if you took your car to a dealership and they bought it off you. Obviously they're going to pay you less than it's worth because they need to make a profit on it. But they've not done that. They've paid me the full market value of my car, which is, you know, what a dealership would sell the car for. And that is honestly a few £1,000s more than I was anticipating. So, you know, that's good in the sense of if I'd gone, right, I don't need a car in London anymore, I'm going to sell it, I would have got thousands less for it than what they've given me for it. So I now do have this pot of money that has given me financial stability, because every month I am teetering on falling into the red by the time I've paid all my rent and bills. And this is just there now as a nice buffer to have that I can dip into. I'm at uni until the end of June, and then hopefully after that I will have a full-time job, hopefully at the same place that I already work, and my salary will be hopefully a decent chunk higher than it is currently, which will make life comfortable and have no money worries. So yeah, as much as it's been traumatic and obviously didn't want it to happen, pulling the positives out of it is that it's improved my financial stability. So that's some kind of win. With regard to everything going on with solicitors and his claim, I'm just trying to forget about it until they contact me or need anything from me. There is no point in me worrying about it. Ultimately, that's what I'm insured for. And if he does win his claim, the insurance will pay him out, and I will just have to pay the excess on my policy, which is a few £100s. And like I say, that few £100s to me is worth it to not have to go to court. So that's all of that. On top of that, a few days later, after the crash, that very same week, the ceiling collapsed at my, well, there's more than that. There was a huge leak and the ceiling ended up collapsing at my nan's property. So for those who don't know, my nan excuse me, my nan has been in a care home for the last 2 years, but she doesn't want to sell her house, and so still owns it, and my parents look after it. It's in the same village as the one that they live in. It's around the corner, and they check in on it every few days, and they make sure it's maintained. The gardener still goes, they still have the heating on, the hedges still get cut, all of that to keep on top of it. And effectively there has been a leak for quite some time that only presented itself that week. So my dad went round and there was about 1/2 inch of water on the kitchen floor, the entire kitchen. It's a kitchen diner, so it's a decent sized room. All the kitchen counters were covered in water, the washing up bowl was full of water, the table was wet. Then in the living room, it wasn't as bad, but the carpet was damp, the sofas had some water on them. Thankfully, they are leather and not fabric. And effectively, my dad went up into the loft and realised that there was a joint that had been leaking. It goes into an old immersion heater tank, so that was like the sort of secondary hot water supply for the bungalow, which never got used. They had it put in my grandparents had it put in when they bought the place in the 90s, and literally used it twice in the whole time that they were there. Anyway, a connection had come loose and this water had been slowly trickling out, and what had happened was it had been sat on top of the ceiling, the kitchen ceiling, and the ceiling had just been absorbing it and absorbing it and absorbing it to a point that it couldn't absorb any more water. At that point, obviously, the water started to come through to the kitchen, which is why it would have happened so quickly, because the ceiling just basically got to breaking point. And when it all came down, the plasterboard was just mush, which it wouldn't have been if it had been a fast leak. If it had been a fast leak, the pressure and the weight of the water would have brought the ceiling down much quicker, and the plasterboard wouldn't have been mush because it takes a while for it to absorb that much water. It would still have had some integrity to it. So it's really unfortunate that it wasn't spotted sooner, but it was in the loft, so there was just no way of knowing without having going up there. So anyway, that happened a few days after my car crash, and you may know that I'm super close with my nan, more so when she still lived at home. I used to see her basically every day. I was living at home too, so we were in the same village, and what that meant was that I took on a lot of responsibilities for her in terms of managing everything to do with the house and her money and things like that. And so that meant that the insurance policy was set up with my contact details, because my nan never had the internet, and she was very easily confused by these things, so it was just easier for me to deal with it for her. So that meant that the insurers were contacting me. Thankfully, obviously we'd done the right thing and we'd got a specialist policy for empty properties. Just as a word of warning, if in case you didn't know that, if you are insuring an empty property, normal house insurance won't cover it. It needs to be an empty property policy. I'm just saying that in case it can possibly help anyone. So anyway, I've had to deal with all of that in terms of I'm the middleman, arranging for them to go out and inspect it, sending over evidence, all of that good stuff. Anyway, now thankfully I've managed to pass that baton on to my mum, because my nan is my mum's mum, and my mum does have power of attorney, and that's getting dealt with, so that's fine. But it was just an awful lot of stress, because that week I was dealing with my own insurance, I was dealing with that insurance, I was in contact with the solicitors about the claim that the other driver made. I was also in contact with the company that were assessing my car. They're one of these auction companies that sells off damaged cars. There was just so much going on, constant phone calls, and with that, whilst trying to get my uni work done and work done, it was just a huge toll, plus the sort of mental strain from being in a car crash. So it was a lot, and it was really quite challenging, but we have moved on from that now. Like I say, my car's gone, I actually got the payment this morning from the insurers. With my nan's place, that is now in hand. So they're both underway, and that's fine. Also been having some issues here, you can't see, but directly below where I'm filming there is a dehumidifier, because this room has really bad condensation. My bedroom here has 3 external walls out of 4. It's only got 1 internal wall, and it's not insulated because it's a 1930s building, and so therefore the condensation is an issue. It is leading to some black mold, and my bedside table, you can't actually see it. My bedside table down there is wooden. It is wet through with water. It is going mouldy. It's growing white mold, and it wasn't even touching the wall. It had just absorbed what was in the atmosphere. So anyway, the landlord has brought around this dehumidifier, which is great. But there are 2 types of dehumidifier. There is a refrigerant dehumidifier and a desiccant dehumidifier. Refrigerant dehumidifiers work the same way as a fridge does. But for them to collect any water, the temperature in the room needs to be 15 degrees or above. That is not the case here because we cannot afford to have the heating on all day because it is so expensive. We have the heating on for half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, and our gas and electric bill is already over £100 a month for the 2 of us for a 2-bedroom flat. Because this flat just cannot hold on to heat. It just loses it immediately because it's not insulated. So we can't keep the temperature of the flat above 15 degrees. Our energy bills would be probably closer to £200 a month. And like I say, there's 2 types of dehumidifier, refrigerant and desiccant. So refrigerant ones work down to 15 degrees. Below that, they're not going to do much because they just don't, the way they work, they can't take moisture out of cold air. Desiccant dehumidifiers work all the way down to 1 degree Celsius because they use, those little white beads of like silica gel or whatever that you'd get in a shoes or handbag. It basically has a spinning disc of those, and they collect all the water, and it drains through into a tank, and they get dried out and collect more water, so it just keeps working that process. So this dehumidifier that I've got is doing something, but it will not get the humidity of the room to below 75%, which is damp. And the humidity goes all the way up to about 87% in here, depending on the temperature. So, yeah, trying to figure out what's going on with that. I don't think the landlord would buy us another dehumidifier because he's got this one. So I'm going to wait and see what happens in the next few weeks before I go home for Christmas. And if it doesn't get any better, my decision is that after Christmas, I am going to buy my own desiccant dehumidifier. They are not the cheapest, they're a couple of £100, but it's worth it for my health because, like I say, I'm getting over a cold. I have been ill. It's not being caused by this damp. I know exactly who made me ill, and that's fine. But it's certainly not going to help. And the other thing that I figure is that if we're going to girl math it, right, I will likely live in older properties for much of my life because I prefer them. I like period properties. I don't like new builds. And most period properties have similar issues with condensation and damp and the like. So, if I spend a couple £100 on this dehumidifier, I will take it with me from place to place, and it'll be worth it in the grand scheme of things. So we've been dealing with that as well, which has been annoying. And then on top of that, there's been some personal issues that I'm not going to go into because it's personal. And also it has been dealt with now and we are moving on from it. But it did cause a few sleepless nights in the last week or so. And I'm the sort of person that when I'm upset or worried or anxious, I can't eat. So I had a few days where I really wasn't eating or sleeping, and obviously that has an impact on performance, and it meant that I've not fallen behind on my uni work properly, but I've done less than I would have liked to. Like I say, we've dealt with the situation, we're moving on from it, that's fine. But for all these reasons, November has just been a really, really shit month. Although we're going to pull the positives out of it. I've got the money for my car. We're getting my nan sorted out. And we're moving towards Christmas. I've got some really lovely plans with my friends at Christmas, which I'm really looking forward to. We had the work Christmas party last weekend. That was so much fun. You might have noticed my nails. I'm missing one here. But that is because me and my friend Helen went as Ken and Barbie, because it was dress up for the Christmas party. It was in a really cool venue, basically underneath Waterloo Station, in these tunnels. And we even had our company name graffitied on the outside, because the venue, you access it through, it's called the Graffiti Tunnel at Waterloo, if you know it. So we had our company's logo graffitied, really cool DJ. There was a drag queen hosting the event for us. So we did a catwalk, and it was through the decades. So Ken and Barbie's technically 90s, like very late 90s. So they did it decade by decade, sort of like pre-1900 or pre-1920, and then they did like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, yada yada yada. And yeah, we all took our turns on the catwalk, and they played music that fit in with that decade, and it was a whole lot of fun. And obviously free food and drink too. So yeah, there has been, some positive things going on, and there are positive things in the future, and I'm going to take the positive things out of what have happened with financial security, and looking forward to a lovely Christmas with my friends and family. And although, I'm not a hugely Christmassy person, it's more for me, it's those couple of weeks in the year where everyone's together, because me and my friends and my family is spread out all around the country, and it's the one time of year that we're all in the same place at the same time and get to spend some really nice quality time with each other. So that'll be lovely. And then we're going to start 2025 afresh. And 2025 is going to be a good year. I'm going to finish my masters. I'm going to be a Master of Architecture. I'm going to have a full-time job as a Master of Architecture. And also, the other piece of good news in November is that me and my friends managed to get Glastonbury tickets. So I'm also going to Glastonbury in 2025. So there's lots to look forward to. There's lots to be positive about. This month has been a big hiccup and a bit traumatic and quite negative on the whole, but we're ending it being positive, and that's where we're going to go with it. So yes, sorry for a long rambly video, and sorry for my cough intermittently, but I just thought I'd update you because I've not had the capacity to film anything else for YouTube. It's all just been a bit too much. So anyway, thanks for watching if you've made it this far. I hope that you're all well too, and that even if you don't celebrate Christmas or you don't enjoy Christmas, that maybe you at least enjoy having some downtime over the festive period. I understand it is a difficult time for a lot of people, and I'm very fortunate that I have friends and family around me. But like I say, thanks for watching. Please take care, and I'll see you all again soon with my next video.